You woke up one day to find yourself living inside the game you were once obsessed with. A Lan who once worked 72-hour days like a corporate slave found himself in that exact situation. But unlike other transmigrators, he had no system, no overpowered abilities. Besides his knowledge of the plot, this unintentionally became a hindrance for him. He thought he could finally enjoy a life of freedom, with servants at his beck and call, escaping the endless cycle of exploitation. However, fate played a cruel joke on him when Erlen discovered he belonged to a family on the brink of annihilation. Unwilling to accept this tragic fate, he chose a path to save himself, taming the 5 deadly sins. Can Erlen change a pre-written destiny, or will he become just another pawn in fate's cruel game? There was once a beautiful place known as the Eastern Alliance Kingdom, but in a decade, this place would be forever changed. It would face a terrifying destruction. Massive, consecutive explosions would lay waste to the nation. The cause, the 5 deadly sins. And in order to prevent this catastrophe, everything had changed drastically. Erlen sat looking over the documents, lost in thought. He had taken on the responsibility of being their guardian. Erlen mused to think this matter would lead to something so grand. Inside a luxurious mansion, under the dim, hazy lights, he was once forced to work 78 hours a week like a slave. But now he's been reincarnated into the body of a nobleman in a fantasy world. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? What a lucky break. On top of that, his character is illiterate and possesses no special abilities whatsoever. Erlen stared sadly at the book. What in the world is this even writing? A helpless servant thought. He's holding the document upside down. A short while later, a servant respectfully announced, "Young master, it is time for your evening meal." He ate with delight. "This is truly delicious." A maid spoke up. "Have you finished your meal, sir? I will prepare your bath before you retire for the night." His days were spent just eating and playing, living the meaningless life of a young master from a count's household. Erlen thought, "This is pure bliss. This is the life, except for the fact that I have absolutely no clue where I am." The maid said, "You should get to bed early, sir. The other young masters will be returning tomorrow." He asked in surprise, "Other young masters?" She replied, "Young Master Leo and Young Master Tonio, of course. You speak as if you've never heard of the Palacio family." Erlen's body froze solid. The Palacio family, a name so familiar it sent a chill down his spine. The maids looked at him with concern. "Young master." Erlen buried his face in his hands, a wave of anxiety washing over him. "Don't tell me this is Cydelia?" Erlen remembered the title of a game he used to play. It was the game he used to play during the few rare moments of freedom he had as a corporate slave. A story-driven role-playing game. Regardless of which storyline the player chose, once the 5 deadly sins appeared: wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession. The kingdom, its noble families, and its cities would begin to fall into ruin. Among them, the family of Count Palacio was the most notorious. They were a degenerate noble family featured in a side quest before the main storyline even began. Erlen collapsed to his knees. "That's right, I know this place all too well." He searched his memories, digging up all the information he had on this family. Erlen stared at the majestic mansion before him, filled with despair. Seriously, why did it have to be the house of Count Palacio? The very first place to be annihilated by the 5 deadly sins? Please, just let me go back to being a slave working 78 hours a week. What's the point of living in luxury if it all comes crashing down in 10 years? This feeling is even worse than having my salary withheld for 6 months. Why does a transmigrator like me get 0 special privileges? Wait a minute, privileges? That's right. Knowing the game's plot 10 years in advance means I know the future. If that's the case, all I have to do is eliminate the root causes of the destruction before they can even happen. And so, in order to enjoy a peaceful life as a nobleman, Erlen decided to reform the 5 deadly sins. He told himself, they're probably still just kids right now. Maybe there's still a chance to save them? 2 months later, in his office, Erlen listened to a report. "I've rescued the orphans in the East. To be more precise, the victims who were turned into living test subjects. Among them, I've assigned the management of the orphanage to a girl named Yusha." Erlen said smugly, "My judgment was indeed correct." "You are a very capable person," Evan replied. "Yes, sir," Evan thought. But was that a compliment? The young master never shows any emotion on his face. Erlen nodded. "Yes, that's right. Evan, from now on, I'll be counting on your support," Evan stammered. "This is really hard to get used to." Erlen looked at his reflection and thought, this face used to be very expressive. It's like my soul didn't fully sync with the facial muscles. Evan was a rare NPC in the game. He was a loyal character, which is why Erlen recruited him. Evan said, "In any case, thank you for the compliment, young master. But this time, you said the raid was specifically to rescue the girl named Yusha, correct?" Erlen replied, "That's right. Evan continued, I have to admit, I now understand why you chose her. Even with my experienced eyes, having spent years as a mercenary, I can tell that girl is anything but ordinary. He recalled the moment he entered the prison to rescue the children. Evan was astonished. She was so powerful. I couldn't understand why she would allow herself to be imprisoned so meekly. Why didn't you bring her here? Isn't that a waste of her potential for you? Erlen agreed. An accurate assessment. He fell into deep thought. On the surface, it may seem like I'm wasting a powerful asset, but maintaining the current situation is all part of the plan. She is a bloodkin who made a pact with an indescribable otherworldly entity, possessing immeasurable power. And later, she will become Wrath, one of the 5 deadly sins, responsible for the deaths of hundreds. But if she's raised in a peaceful environment, she surely won't walk the path of destruction. With that, I've defused the first-time bomb. Now, I just need to come up with a reason for not bringing her here. Erlen cleared his throat. Well, yes. He leaned on his hand for emphasis. Because the time is not yet right. Evan exclaimed in surprise. The time is not yet right. Erlen nodded. Correct. Ensure this matter doesn't get out. And provide the girl with everything she needs. Evan accepted the order. Yes, I understand. Suddenly, he took something out. And give this to Yusha. Evan was curious. A letter, sir? Is it important? Erlen replied. It's just a letter to check on her. The girl went through a horrific ordeal with those biological experiments. So I thought a little comfort might help calm her down. Evan took it. You even wrote a letter for her? I'll deliver it with care. Afterwards, he stood by the window, watching Evan ride off. Erlen felt a sense of unease. I wonder if it will truly comfort her. The true content hidden within that seemingly simple letter was a chant he had heard dozens of times while playing the game. It was a spell to befriend the bloodkin, so it should have a calming effect. Sin of wrath, be calm. The sorrow of darkness, the nothingness of light, one desire, one belonging. These were all chants from the Sin of Wrath storyline. But by that point in the game, Yusha had already been completely corrupted. She would say coldly, it is too late. In the game, failing this check would trigger a boss battle. But now, 10 years before that happens, perhaps it's not too late. Erlen stretched and sighed. One of the 5 doom flags has been removed. So, what's next on the list? The idea of befriending a monster with just a single chant is laughable. But considering they're a race that worships an otherworldly entity, it just might work. The minds of extreme fanatics are truly difficult to comprehend. Elsewhere, Yusha held the letter in silence. Evan was startled. The magical power still radiating from the girl was simply absurd. Yet she had a strange air about her, as if completely devoid of emotion. She spoke. The one who sent this letter was Lord Erlen, correct. Why didn't he summon me to his side? Evan panicked internally. What the hell? He stammered. Well, he looked at Yusha. Manifesting magical power in a visible form, that's something only a master-level mage should be able to do. He remembered his master's words. Because the time is not yet right. Evan hastily said, that's right. It's because the time isn't right. She immediately retracted her intense aura. I see. The letter read, remember this, the sorrow of darkness, the nothingness of light, shall gradually fade away. Yusha was touched. That must be a promise only my master would know. All right, I understand now. Terrified, Evan felt cold sweat trickle down his body as he remained on high alert. She gave a terrifying smile. I will follow his will. As for Erlen, he lay on his bed. Today was a satisfying day. Even the bright moon is cheering me on. I have to do my best for the next one, too. Over here, a pile of books on the shelf fell onto Erlen's head. He sat on the floor, groaning. It's not here either. Finding clues about the 3rd threat is giving me a headache. Evan rushed in, saying, Young master, we've rescued the 2nd child you mentioned. A lump had already formed on Erlen's head. He said, Really? You're sure you treated the child well? Evan replied, Of course, sir. After rescuing the child from the illegal slave market. Suddenly, the door was kicked open by someone. A hostile man walked in, saying, Well, if it isn't Erlen. This was the 2nd young master of the house of Count Palacio, Tonio. He flicked his wrist at Erlen and said, Why isn't a literate like you holding a book? Oh, that's right. I heard you've been studying recently. He glared at Erlen. Hey, answer your older brother. He thought to himself, he's always this annoying. How did the previous Erlen put up with this? I really want to fight back, but Erlen immediately acted obediently, bowing his head and saying, It seems you still wish to use the library, brother. In that case, I will take my leave. Tonio stepped on his head smugly. You know your place, don't you? Suddenly, a knife flew past him from out of nowhere. Looking closely, the knife was now firmly embedded in the wall. Just then, someone walked in from a distance and said, You insects are being too loud. Tonio felt annoyed. What the? The eldest young master walked in, pointing at them with a stern voice. I don't want to see blood this early in the morning, so get lost. This was the eldest son of the house, Leo Palacio. Immediately, the two brothers faced off. Brother, I told you to drop that condescending attitude when you enter the library, Leo replied. Get lost while you still can. Meanwhile, Erlen quietly slipped away. The Palacio territory disappeared from the game quickly. Erlen recalled his mission, investigate the Palacio domain of the kingdom. This was a domain rife with corruption, running an organization called Avalon, but their power was greater than he thought. Basically, these scumbag brothers were fighting for the position of family head. One was a major figure in the underworld, and the other managed a large-scale illegal substance syndicate. Erlen thought to himself, for the sake of my life, I can't confront these two. And so, Erlen and Evan quietly let the two of them fight it out and slipped outside. The library was filled with the sounds of a fierce battle, objects flying everywhere. Evan adjusted Erlen's hair. Erlen thought to himself, I'll just live happily with the identity of a weak and talentless illegitimate son. He then returned to his room and exclaimed warily, although the second child also seems to be anything but ordinary. Erlen, who was relaxing, turned to look at him, confused. Seeing this demeanor, Evan couldn't help but wonder. How could a person like this know about the illegal slave market and the secret biological experiments happening in other lands? How on earth? Meanwhile, Erlen let out a long, lazy yawn. Evan was perplexed. It seems he's having a hard time controlling himself. Erlen remained on the bed, sighing, so tired. Evan suddenly spoke up. Young master, you are indeed quite strange. You sent that child to the orphanage. Erlen didn't look at him. He couldn't help but think. He said that child was not ordinary. That boy is not just not ordinary, he's on a destructive level. Within an allied empire made up of many nations, its central nation was the Kingdom of Kalian. The child we rescued from the illegal slave market is the second boss of psychedelia, Dermacalian. After being sold into slavery and tortured, as he was moved from place to place, he became the embodiment of one of the 5 great sins, sloth. He transformed into something like a demon. He then proceeded to destroy nations in the most horrific ways imaginable. It was at this part of the story that many players were shocked by the game's cruelty. Contrary to the title Sloth, he was known to be extremely diligent and would repay both kindness and grudges many times over. That's why I had to emphasize to Evan to treat her kindly. He trembled, holding his teacup, and exclaimed, it's all too vivid. Erlen said calmly, the reason I sent him to the orphanage is because the time is not yet right. Hearing this, Evan replied, I had thought of that, so. The letter you sent to Yusha was about the second child. Erlen recalled the letter and answered, yes, and there was some small talk too. He recounted, I told her to take care of the slightly frail child I was sending over. His figure looked so lonely there, his whole body covered in wounds. Just then, a pair of small feet approached, and a voice said, you. A clear voice rang out from behind her. You are broken. The voice continued calmly, that is the mark of that thing. His hand moved slightly. Yusha appeared before her eyes and asked, it's the dark sun, isn't it? She smiled and continued, and yet, the great moon still chose you. Congratulations. Yusha gave a villainous, witch-like smile, her body radiating powerful magic. So, feel the power you have been gifted and let your potential be unleashed. She extended her hand towards Dur, smiling, if you remain loyal and obey his commands, you will have your revenge. Just then, threads of magic began to radiate from behind him. Yusha smiled as she looked up from the letter. Now, I should send my first reply. Under the moonlight, Erlen's messages appeared. She wanted to send him a gentle greeting. At that moment, at the Count's mansion where Erlen lived, Evan burst through the door. Erlen was still mumbling. Where on earth is the third one? Evan suddenly said, there's big trouble, sir. Evan continued, that scumbag no. I mean, the second young master. Hearing this, Erlen looked up. What? He asked, is he dead? The death of the second young master had happened unexpectedly. Erlen wondered, really? They then gathered at the second young master's funeral. 2 beautiful girls stood on either side of Count Palacio, whining, Master. The other also sighed. When will this be over? I'm so bored. The one next to her chimed in. Not to be outdone. I'm hungry. Erlen was speechless. Bringing illegal substances and women to his own son's funeral. I knew this family was rotten, but this is straight out of a dark fantasy. Erlen looked down at his brother's body. In any case, Tonio dying from an accidental fall, this is different from what I remember. Back in the game, it was the man next to him who was the killer. I finally killed that insect after 50 long years. Now I am the rightful heir. I am Count Palacio. He had wept dramatically, saying he had finally killed him after all those years. But right now, he wore a look of what a wonderful stroke of luck. Erlen looked over, exasperated. At least try to hide your feelings. The mastermind is definitely Leo or one of his lackeys. Anyway, he stared at the person lying in the coffin. I just need to deal with the 5 great sins. A year later, since the succession issue was resolved and Leo had taken over the illegal substance business, the Count's territory had become much more peaceful. Erlen and Evan sat opposite each other, the latter still eating from his plate. Erlen thought while looking at a stack of papers. During that time, Yusha and I have become pen pals. If I continue to keep in touch with her, it will be useful for the future. In her letter, Yusha began to narrate, Ayuna is very good at hide and seek. Hayden is great at playing war games. Bear is still growing up normally, and he likes puppets. Erlen read this with a faint smile. It seems they are all good kids. Below was the line, this month's list of sponsors. As soon as Erlen saw it, he exclaimed, the list has grown again. It's interesting that so many sponsors have appeared for such a small orphanage. Evan added, it's a bit unusual, but it's a good thing nonetheless. Oh, right. About that thing you've been searching for. Evan continued, I received a call from the Information Guild saying they found a clue. Hearing this, he said while eating, really? What a relief. It must be a lead on the third boss. I can finally find him. The light from the window outside brightly illuminated the room. The two of them silently went about their own business. Elsewhere, a tragic scream echoed. This was the distribution point for the illegal substance, maggot. 2 men walked forward, saying, the fish from the Palacio family is quite generous. He always gives us handsome rewards. The person next to him replied, that's right. Our organization now has several hundred members. Before their eyes were a group of murdered people. Just a little more upon seeing the scene before them, they were startled. The people there screamed tragically, no, my hands are out of control. Help. Immediately after, a horrific scene unfolded as everyone there simultaneously took their own lives. Their desperate screams echoing. Nearby, a figure stood silently in the shadows. Yusha appeared behind her and said, I quite enjoyed today's puppet show. It seems there's still much to report. In his hand were the magic threads controlling the puppets. He turned to ask her, is there any meaning in doing these things? Yusha turned back to ask him. What? You pity them, De replied, no. Because they used others to create drugs. I just don't know if this has anything to do with my revenge. She replied, of course it's useful. We are creating a space for him to return. Yusha flashed a villainous smile. How can we let this place look shabby when he arrives? Der heard this and replied without expression, understood. Immediately after, the two of them activated their magic. A whirlwind kicked up, and they vanished. The two were like phantoms floating in the night. Everything will proceed according to his will. Then, a brilliant light flashed in the night. Under the peaceful crescent moon, Yusha's voice echoed, we, the blue moon, shall be his sword. The place was now empty, leaving only a deep crater in the ground. It had been 2 years since Erlen became Yusha's pen pal. Evan dragged his exhausted body. Where are you, sir? Evan collapsed onto the grass. I'm back. So you were in the backyard. I see. Erlen said nonchalantly, oh my, Evan, you startled me. He gestured and said, the 5th child has been safely sent to the orphanage. Hearing this, Erlen was greatly surprised. By that time, the remaining 3 sins had all been rescued. He offered food to Evan. Here, eat. Yes, thank you, sir. As Erlen handed the food to Evan, he thought, finding the 3rd one, the sin of greed, was a bit difficult, but with my game knowledge, I had Evan go all the way to the bone marrow waste. In the end, everything went smoothly. After giving him the food, he said, you've done well running around like that. You can rest for a bit now. Evan asked, is the orphanage mission over? Erlen replied casually, yes, it's done. What a relief. Evan lay down, sighed, and asked, but young master, aren't you happy? I am. You don't look like it. He pointed to his mouth. I'm smiling right now. Then he gave an incredibly artificial smile. Let's just say you are. The sunlight shone down, and he stretched and took a deep breath. Erlen lay on the grass, lost in thought. This is progressing better than I expected. Everything's going smoothly. The masters of the familiars all became the 5 deadly sins after a past tragedy. Although this was established in their past, before they awakened as sins, the chance of perfectly saving all of them before their tragedies occurred was very slim. He was even more worried about rescuing them after they had already fallen. Just then, Erlen asked, how's the orphanage? Evan handed him a letter. Same as usual. Everything is going smoothly. Evan continued. The children were initially like broken dolls. He added, have brightened up a bit. Erlen opened the letter. Really? Then we won't need any more caretakers. He thought, I didn't expect Yusha to do so well. Perhaps it's because her character setting is tied to the orphanage? She must hate having people interfere. Erlen called Evan closer. When you look at it this way, Yusha is a good kid too. So, is there anything special in there? In the letter, Yusha wrote, everyone is well. Some of the children here are growing up to be very beautiful. You really don't need to worry about Dur anymore. And you don't need to worry about the children you just sent over either. After reading the letter, Erlen was pleased. It's great to see they are all being raised well. He also thought all 5 sins are growing up normally. I guess environment really is important. Evan asked, so when do you plan to meet the children? You always say there will be a time for that. Erlen stammered about that. On the outside, Erlen seemed hesitant, but internally, he had no intention of meeting them directly. It would be better in many ways if he became closer to them. But perhaps because the process of becoming a sin was so horrific and tragic, their personalities, as seen in the game's flashbacks, were already terrible since childhood. He carefully considered, it's true I saved them before their awakening, so it should be better. But it's still scary. He stammered, maybe in 5 years we'll be fine. I understand, sir. Erlen breathed a sigh of relief. Anyway, from now on, in this horrifying dark fantasy world, what he needed were some self-defense skills. He thought magic requires talent, and do I happen to have it? Evan spoke up, but young master, have you heard of the Blue Moon? Erlen replied that he had never heard of them. Evan explained they were an organization that had recently become famous for hunting down criminal organizations. Hearing that, Erlen asked, like taking out the trash. Sounds like a good deed. But in his mind, he thought, it's not part of the setting, I know, so they'll probably disappear soon. Evan said seriously, but recently, they've even started killing nobles. That's why I thought you would know about them, young master. Erlen called him, Evan, from today on, you will sleep in the room next to mine. As night fell, the moonlight illuminated the entire mansion. A voice was heard, now then, shall we hear the weekly report on the Blue Moon's activities? Yusha nodded and softly said, the north. Zaylan cheerfully said that he had taken care of everything. He nonchalantly said, the heads of the slave traders. He jumped for joy. See, they didn't even know who I was. I loved the outfit Rai made. I told them if they could guess my eye color, they'd live. But nobody knew. Rai also spoke up, saying that all the bodies had been cleanly buried. Raiden, sitting on the stairs, also chimed in. The South is also done. The illegal human experimentation labs and the annoying Avalano bunch, all torn apart without a trace. Yusha smiled devilishly. Good, everything is proceeding according to his will. She said, we exist for the glory of the Great Moon. They were all part of the secret organization, Blue Moon, who worshipped the Great Moon. However, a problem has arisen. Yusha said, under his will, everything is perfect. How could a problem exist? Raiden said, the leader of Avalon is the Count's eldest son. Correct. During the Southern Purge, a dangerous document was discovered. It seems the Count's eldest son is plotting against him. This surprised Yusha, but she didn't show much emotion. What? A demonic power radiated from her entire body. Is that so? Even those around her were terrified by it. She held up the piece of paper in her hand. After the frail Count passes away, quietly eliminate him with poison. She angrily crumpled the paper. Really, you're right. 2 years later, as expected, Charlin, the Count Palacio, passed away. The officially announced cause of death was cardiac arrest. But judging by the drug abuse leading to his death, it's obvious, a voice said. What? Blue Moon again? Erlen listened silently. Yes, they assassinated him at night. So, another assassination. Erlen saw this and thought, it seems they're starting to be more cautious about Blue Moon. Furthermore, at the Count's funeral, no one shed a tear for him. It ended quietly in utter silence. Everyone coldly departed. Evan spoke up. Young master, what should we do? Next year, the commoner, the eldest son, will inherit the title. Huh? What's with all this luggage? Erlen was packing. You packed too. He said, we're leaving. Evan was surprised. What? You're leaving the mansion? Erlen replied, not exactly. We're heading south. After packing, Evan asked, south? You mean Rodman, sir? Yes. Erlen planned to move to a small village in the southern part of the Palacio territory, namely Rosman. Someone was on the balcony, observing his every move. Leo had been watching from beginning to end but said nothing. The delicious smell of fried eggs and toast on the pan. Erlen happily fried them in the pan, his mouth watering. The happy life of the two didn't last long. After 3 days, Erlen was back at the Count's mansion. He scratched his head in frustration. Now what? Another funeral for the eldest son. He said dejectedly, I can't believe I'm back in this bloody place. The circumstances of this death are very different. How did he die? Looking at Leo in the coffin, the cause of death was being stabbed through the heart with a sword. Erlen thought, who could it be? Who killed Leo? Just then, Erlen turned and asked, may I ask about the cause of death? The guards immediately panicked. They jumped in fear. Forgive us for looking at you, sir. Erlen was also stunned. What's wrong with them all of a sudden? Erlen walked past the crowd. Evan followed, calling, young master. He asked quietly, Evan, did you find anything? Well, about that, young master, is it possible? Evan whispered, that you are the one who wiped out Avalon in one night. He looked at Evan, then turned to look at the other people in the mansion. A few days earlier, on the day Erlen left for Rosman, Evan spoke up, by the way, young master, if you're leaving anyway, wouldn't it be better to choose a city? Erlen thought to himself, no, absolutely not. Rosman is the final destination in my plan. He had saved the 5 deadly sins from their circumstances, and prevented the future, where the world would be destroyed. Rosman had no connection to the original storyline, and it even had a palatial villa. It was the perfect place to live comfortably as a nobleman. The perfect place to live a sweet life. Erlen said slowly, there's a reason for everything. Evan immediately stopped him. I won't be fooled again. You always act evasive like that when you're bothered. At Evan's sighing attitude, Erlen clicked his tongue. Let's just say that's the case. The carriage drove out of the Count's mansion. Leo witnessed it, thinking, should I kill him or not? Anyway, he's useless whether he's here or not. I was considering getting rid of him with poison after father's death. But Leo thought again, since he's quietly heading to the border, there's no reason to kill him anymore. He then told himself, perhaps it's because things with Avalon haven't been going smoothly lately. He gripped the railing tightly with a lingering thought, a nuisance. With that, he ordered his servant, and Meng, to follow the carriage. And Meng was Leo's right-hand man. He asked, does that mean you want me to kill him? Leo was suddenly surprised by the question. What? He was taken aback. And Meng usually followed orders without any complaints. Why did he suddenly ask a question? Leo said with displeasure, your job is to do as I say. Just as he uttered those words, a sword was plunged into his chest. Leo's voice trembled. How dare you betray me? The man said, I've enjoyed the civil war. However, this person was Haydn, a member of the Blue Moon organization, not in Meng. It's been quite fun until now. We were taught by the Blood Moon. The Blue Moon is his sword. We act according to his will. But if anyone dares to harm the Great Moon, with that, he pushed the sword deeper into Leo. Then he decisively pulled the sword out. We are permitted to act on our own. Blood from the sword splattered all over the floor. He watched Leo collapse. That's why I've been waiting for you to say those words. I didn't expect it to take 2 years. Leo threatened, my men won't let you leave safely. With the words you've just uttered, Avalon will now disappear from the continent forever. He even feigned pity for Leo. What a shame, the Great Moon gave you a chance. After saying that, he leaped from the balcony and vanished. The sky began to brighten, and the sun rose to work as it did every day. For Erlen, Rosman was truly a paradise. He woke up happily. Good morning. He woke up whenever he wanted, admired the scenery, another peaceful day. He ate when he wanted and ate whatever he liked. Finally, I can enjoy the life of a true nobleman. Erlen thought while eating. Maybe I should start a bakery business. Evan walked in with a letter in his hand. Young master, a letter has arrived. Taking it, Erlen wondered, what's this? The piece of bread in his hand fell onto the table. The letter stated that after the death of Leo Palacio, he was requested to return. And just like that, his free paradise days ended in just 3 days. So, a sad Erlen stood before his brother's funeral, and he had returned to the mansion once again. Looking at the terrified crowd before him, he wondered, why is everyone reacting like this? Evan spoke up, young master, since when were you the mastermind who wiped out Avalon? Erlen was stunned by this question. In other words, he had fallen into a recurring simulation of crazy situations. Erlen sat sulking in a corner. Hey, he said, can you explain to me in a way I can understand why I've become the mastermind? Evan said calmly, because you are the only one left alive after this incident. Leo was murdered right after we left the mansion, giving you a perfect alibi and making you the heir. Erlen was dumbfounded after hearing that. He realized the problem. Evan continued to explain, Avalon has vanished, so there's no one left to cause trouble over Leo's death. And just like that, Evan said cheerfully, you've become the mastermind of the case, with a master assassin under your command. Aren't you happy? What's with that outfit? He thought carefully, damn, when did I even start this? There's no organization that could wipe out a major player in the underworld that quickly. Erlen asked, now that you mention it, didn't you say there was an organization that hunts other organizations? Are you referring to the Blue Moon? Yes, do you think it was them? Evans said the Information Guild reported it didn't seem to be them. They said the blue moon doesn't leave corpses, but always leaves behind a symbol. However, the members of Avalon were all killed by swords. It was a scene straight out of Hell on Earth, they said. So that's why I'm the mastermind with the sword master under my command. Erlen then realized, that's right, the blue moon didn't appear in the game. There's no way a weak organization that disappears before the main story starts could be the culprit. Then who the hell was it? Meanwhile, Yusha interrogated, are there any traces? Rai immediately replied, we left nothing behind. Zaylan also spoke up, me neither. Same here. He laughed gleefully. It was just a bunch of corpses there. Just then, the door opened and a familiar voice said, we're here. Raiden's group also arrived. The remaining Avalon forces number 486. Raiden announced, just as the boss wanted. The man laughed and said, we cut them in half. After hearing everyone's report, Yusha was extremely satisfied. Good. Perfect. And so, Avalon, the colossal organization that once dominated the Astoria kingdom, was turned to dust in just 5 days. Raiden interrupted again, however. It seems the cleanup isn't finished yet. What do you mean? He held up a stack of documents. I found more nobles involved with Avalon. The Duchy of Anhia seems to have been deeply involved. After hearing this, Yusha fell silent for a moment. She opened the stack of documents Raiden brought. She radiated her usual terrifying aura. You already know what I'm about to say, don't you? Everyone understood her words and said nothing more. Raiden spoke up. Let's handle them quietly. Let's just deal with them quietly. Yusha then let out a sigh. She turned to Rai and said, finally, the Information Guild has made everything clear, right? Rai picked up the paper and replied, yes. They are considering this matter unrelated to the Blue Moon. Dur, at her side, added, the other guilds are the same. They call it a hell created by a swordmaster. Hearing this, she asked, we're still monitoring, right? Yusha let out a small laugh and said, continue. This matter must absolutely not touch that person. I've said it countless times, so you all know, right? He then made the papers beside him float and continued. But because that person's blood relative tried to target that person first, this case was not in order. Remembering that person's appearance, he said, we are a sword. Upon hearing this, Yusha became excited, covering her face and saying, a sword must not think for itself, right? Her eyes flashed with a red light as she looked towards the window. The blue moon must act on orders. Remember this. This person knows everything. The other four looked up tensely. Her voice was full of determination. Never disappoint that person. Dur looked at Yusha and felt confused. I don't understand. For someone with abilities as outstanding as Yusha, to feel so anxious and restless just because she might be found out. He then held up the stack of papers and said, I understand. It is all for the Great Moon. For that person, at the Count's mansion, the lights were still on. Erlen sat at his desk, sighing. I can't do this anymore. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. After the funeral, he had been extremely busy for a month, Erlen lamented. I just want to relax and live off my money. That's what nobles do. He looked down and thought, although I've made many enemies, Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years later anyway, because my brother's deaths changed the game's timeline. All the family's work has been dumped on me. The heir. Suddenly, a voice called out, young Count. Old men immediately entered, each holding a pile of items, books, or scrolls. Seeing this, he sighed even more deeply. The dark circles under Erlen's eyes were now clearly visible. He wondered, why is everyone working so hard? When the Count was alive, they worked leisurely and even took shortcuts. From a distance, the old men saw Erlen's gloomy expression and waved, becoming terrified. Is he angry? I have to work harder. I don't want to die. And so, his face turned pale from overwork. The vassals must be working diligently because of the rumors about me being the mastermind, right? I told you to come. Why didn't you? Now Erlen was just a corporate slave working in silence. In his heart, he wished they would just take care of everything themselves. Scene change. A fire blazed, slowly roasting meat. Evan asked, young master. He looked up, confused. I have to say, I'm truly surprised. Erlen was controlling magic, making it fly around the room. Evan continued. To reach rank 2 in just 2 years of self-study, your talent is outstanding. When did you develop like this? He continued, normally, it takes about 4 years to reach rank 2, and magic is unusable unless you're born with a blessing. Erlen replied calmly. I guess I have some talent. I was worried, so I trained hard for self-defense. Erlen thought to himself, this technique also requires precise mana control. He controlled the magic, making it fly around relentlessly. However, the important thing is that it's incomplete. Erlen's face showed his fatigue. I never thought I would actually use magic in a fantasy world. He controlled the magic and said softly, I was very excited at first. Once the plan is complete, there will be no more danger, so I'll just learn slowly. Immediately after, the magic orb flew up, but recently survival has become a real issue. I've realized a certain truth. With tears in his eyes, he lamented, my mana pool is super small. Erlen sighed, nothing works. He then recalled the information about it. The mana pool one is born with is like an athlete's physical build that's fixed from birth, and his mana pool was tiny. Thinking about this, Erlen felt immense pain. He realized the truth was that it was so small. Even practice wouldn't help. While eating, Erlen thought, if all other methods fail, there is one way. Just then, Evan picked up a letter and said, oh, right? A ball invitation has also arrived for the young master. Hearing that, he turned to look. A ball? And so, the day of the ball arrived. Erlen was at a luxurious mansion, surrounded by other nobles. He entered wearing his count's attire with Evan. As soon as they entered, Erlen sighed. Phew, I'm already tired. It was a regular ball for networking among nobles held in the southern region of the Astoria Kingdom. As he was soon to become the count, perhaps he should use this opportunity to build some relationships. Erlen adjusted the cravat on his neck and walked in. Evan, behind him, was stuffing his face with food and asked, what are you doing? He thought to himself, getting to know the nobles is important for my peaceful future. But as soon as Erlen approached, everyone around him was frightened by his appearance and quickly moved away. Then, Erlen extended his hand to greet someone nearby. The man immediately panicked, and then the whole group fled as if chased by a ghost. Evan, beside him, couldn't help but laugh comfortingly. Don't be Tahawa, don't be sad. Erlen watched them go and thought, sad? Not really. I expected this, so. Erlen said, Evan, I'm heading back. He turned to leave. I knew I'd be ignored for my lack of dignity. I'm not like my illustrious great-grandfather. Palacio, Evan, behind him, scratched his head in confusion. Erlen's face was grim. Right now, I'm the black sheep of the East. But he hadn't come here without a plan. Erlen picked up a glass of wine. I will resolve the situation with the social skills I've been secretly practicing. He then spoke up. The taste of this wine is very distinctive. A girl nearby heard this and turned her head. To her, Erlen's expression suddenly became very frightening and gloomy. He even used a low voice. The aroma, in particular, seems different. Erlen gave a faint, devilish smile. I'd like to have a few bottles at home. However, in his mind, he thought, this is a benevolent smile, a necessity for socializing. The girl's face turned pale, and she trembled. Immediately after, she ran away in fear, saying, I'll talk to my father and have it prepared right away. Erlen watched her go, bewildered. Wait, no, he thought to himself. That's not it. The people behind him started whispering about Erlen. He threatened her to get a limited edition bottle. Worse than his brothers. Even more of a ruffian. Evan, beside him, couldn't help but pat Erlen's shoulder, trying to stifle his laughter. Erlen was still trying to deny reality. She must be the shy type. They left afterwards. Evan said, your spoils of war have increased again. He continued while eating heartily an impressive list. Erlen, beside him, was dejected and mumbled, I even studied about wine. Erlen listed the items in his head. A fine horse from Pandion, Quidfenian orange tea, metal crafted by Violanda. Malantino's specialty product. Turns out the Palacio name is even more infamous than I thought. And because rumors said Erlen had killed his own roguish brothers, he seemed to have become someone everyone avoided. So much for socializing. Is it just me? Or have I become even more alienated from everyone? He said warily, I'm going to get some air. Evan stood still and said, yes, sir. Behind them, a red-haired girl was silently watching him. She looked at him as if deep in thought. Erlen then went outside and leaned against the railing to admire the view. He couldn't stop wondering, where did it all go wrong? Just then, a voice called out, excuse me. Hello, may I speak with you for a moment? Hearing that, Erlen was startled and turned his head. Did someone just talk to me? Who is it? However, when he turned around, he saw no one. Suddenly, another voice spoke, I am. Erlen was startled and looked down. A petite girl appeared before him. She introduced herself. Loria, the third daughter of Duke Antia. Hearing the name, he thought to himself, Antia, of course. Erlen said, yes, hello. The Antia family was one of the three great villainous families, the black sheep of the north. Erlen thought to himself, anyone who talks to me won't be normal. He looked at the small girl and thought, but why don't I remember this girl? I don't think I ever saw her in the game. Loria suddenly spoke up. I'll be direct. Please lend me your strength. At that moment, Erlin's expression in her eyes became terrifyingly dark. Loria continued nervously, I am going to be assassinated soon. Her words echoed in the dark night, surprisingly soft. Loria's face was filled with fear as she looked up. Hearing this, Erlin thought, she received her father's affection and has been protected as his illegitimate child until now. Duke Antia has fallen gravely ill, she said fearfully, but now. Loria hesitated before continuing, my half-sisters are about to kill me. He wondered, so it's all just a battle for survival? Erlin looked down and understood. No wonder I don't remember her, because she was already dead when the game started. Loria said with an urgent tone, if it's your strength, Lord Erlin, then please. However, Erlin replied, I refuse. Loria still wanted to continue. I am not asking you to help me for free, she said anxiously. If you help me, I will give you half of the Anya family. But he had already turned away, saying, that's enough. I'll be taking my leave. Erlin thought to himself, it's pitiful, but just keeping myself alive is hard enough. I shouldn't get myself into more trouble. Even if I wanted to help, I'm not as capable as the rumors say. I don't have any special powers. Erlin couldn't help but look back at the lonely figure of the girl standing there. Loria's face was sad and silent. He rubbed his neck and let out a sigh. Then Erlin turned back. Something good will happen to you soon. I hope she finds a good ally. Then he went back inside the party. Two people in black hoods were talking over here. So Antia has approached the great moon. I should also let the red moon know that something good will come to that person. The girl beside him said, no, there's no need. If the information is correct, she is the only one in the Antia household not involved with Avalon. They observed Loria from above, meaning she is not one of Raiden's targets. He then turned away and said, that's good too. All the other answers will be dealt with eventually. That's right. Under the Red Moon's orders, we will focus on cutting off the information flow, so that the incident at Avalon never reaches his ears. They silently observed Erlin from above. At that moment, he was at the party, lamenting. It feels so empty around here. Am I surrounded by some kind of barrier? Erlin didn't notice a mysterious girl nearby. She said, hello. As soon as Erlin heard someone talking to him, he was moved. Was that directed at me, really? Could it be that this time I can actually befriend a noble? Erlin turned around and said, yes. Hello. The girl held a fan to her mouth and smiled faintly. The moment he saw that, Erlin immediately thought again, another shady character. I've seen this face in the game before. Looking at the girl, he thought, anyone who actively initiates a conversation with me first is definitely not a normal noble. As soon as he recognized her, Erlin walked over and said, hello, Lady Zenonia. Seeing that he recognized her, Kalia was surprised. Oh my, you know me? He said calmly, of course. You're very famous. The three most notorious villainous families in the kingdom of Astoria. In the north, it's the House of Anya. In the east, the House of Palacio. And finally, in the west, the hedonistic Zenonia. She reminded one of a noble serpent. Kalia laughed softly. Famous? Me? She was the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia. If Palacio was a criminal gang, then Zenonia was the high-class version. A legalized mafia corporation. Thinking of this, Erlin couldn't help but tremble. I just need a few noble connections to live peacefully. He resolved himself. Even if half my life is already on the line, for the sake of this sweet life, I absolutely must not get involved with them. Erlin said to the person, it's because you are so beautiful. Kalia replied, thank you for the compliment. She smiled and said, I would love to talk more. What do you say? Erlin calmly replied, I would like to as well, but there are too many eyes watching in his heart. He begged, please just let me go quietly. Kalia looked at him and said cryptically, just as the rumors say. Then she turned to leave. I hope to see you again soon. Hearing that, he was confused. Kalia then turned away. Erlin watched her go, bewildered. What the hell just happened? The two people observing from above looked down and said, information about the Avalon incident is being completely sealed. The other continued, however. A new concern has now emerged. They looked towards the window where someone was hiding in a tree. That person is still following him. A tail? Then two small figures quickly darted away. There are no direct orders yet, so let's just observe. We can handle it if necessary. Scene change. Evan scratched his head, confused. Young master, are you sure this is the real one this time? They were standing before a canyon. Evan felt skeptical. Is this canyon really the place we've been looking for all this time? He continued, even though it's the middle of the day. It's unusually dark inside. As for Erlin, he looked as if he was about to ascend to heaven. He clenched his fist. Finally found it. My real goal. The environmental effects also match. So this is definitely the place. Evan sighed. If this one turns out to be a fake too, I think I'll get depressed. They walked inside, observing their surroundings. There were inscriptions on the stones. Erlen replied, this time it's the real deal. In the game, this place was much easier to find. The real reason he had trekked all the way here under the guise of a scouting mission was for the Labyrinth of the South. That labyrinth was called the Labyrinth of Whispers. Solve all the puzzles in the 8 rooms, and you will receive a precious artifact as a reward. Erlen smiled, looking ahead. I still remember the entire guide and the amazing feeling of grinding for levels and gear. Before them was a massive gate with strange characters written on it. He looked up in awe to see the entrance to the labyrinth in real life, even though I got sick of this place in the game. Standing before it now feels completely different. Evan exclaimed in amazement. This canyon looks like it was carved by human hands. How do you know about places like this? Erlen looked up and said, I've been here many times. Hearing that, Evan was confused. You've been here many times. Erlen snapped out of it, daydreaming again. He said, just kidding. I have my ways. Let's go. Seeing Erlen's creepy expression, Evan cried out, please don't say things like that with such a serious face. As soon as they entered, they heard the roar of a monster above. Its large hands clapped together, creating a terrifying sound. Evan looked around in awe. This place looks like if you get one puzzle wrong, you'll be crushed. Erlen remained silent, assessing the situation. The horrifying sounds continued to echo. Evan was stunned, watching his emotionless face as he wrote something on the stone tablet. How can he be so calm? He watched his focused expression as he wrote, perplexed. Even in a situation like this, Evan recalled the events that had transpired. It's been for years together, and I still can't figure him out. None of the missions we've done have been the same. Paying someone's debt, helping a slave, rescuing an orphan, taking down an evil organization, delivering a meaningless letter. The monster didn't seem to be finished yet. He was confused. How does he know this place so intimately when he's never even left home? Erlen calmly pointed at the monster and said, the puzzle is solved, but it hasn't opened. We have to wait for that thing to finish. The sounds continued relentlessly. Evan kept thinking, even so, following this mysterious master always leads to something good. The two of them looked towards the other side. Erlen said, oh, it's opening. Evan thought to himself, what are you planning this time, young master? Deep inside, Erlen was screaming. Finally, the door is opening. Oh God, I feel like throwing up. I knew this place was tough, but I didn't think it would be this brutal. I almost broke my neck trying not to look. Then, before them was a pile of precious jewels illuminating the entire room. Evan exclaimed, it's finally over, right? Erlen said calmly, yes. Let's take the black ring and go. In the distance, 6 rings were set on a fake hand. Seeing that, Evan said, that one. It looks terrifyingly useless. Erlen picked up the black ring and said, it's a bit big, but touching the other things will only bring more trouble. Leave them be. He silently looked at the ring and thought, finally, I've obtained the ring of binding. Erlen continued, don't worry, the way back is safe. Evan stammered, yes, sir. As they walked, Erlen thought relaxedly, thanks to remembering the game guide, this was too easy. However, Evan's expression was not so great. Young master, did you anticipate this as well? Before them was a horde of giant golems. So those rocks in the canyon were actually golems. Evan worriedly calculated in his mind. An unknown number of enemies. This is great. There has to be some way to get him out of here. Erlen walked forward directly and said, this time, I'll do it. Hearing that, Evan was stunned. Just then, the group of monsters all turned towards them. Evan warned, whatever you're planning, the top priority is to get out of here, okay? Just then, one of them lunged to attack. Evan cried out, wait. A rank dispel probably won't be enough. At that moment, Erlen said softly, binding, activate. The ring on his hand flashed with the black light. Immediately after, the golem seemed to change, and a light flared. A voice echoed in the space, fragment that inherits the great will of Malala. State the 2 limits by which you can grow. Erlen stood in a pitch-black space. He started looking around. In the game, a selection window would appear here. So that voice is. A large face emerged from the darkness, the reward for clearing the labyrinth of binding. As its name suggests, it's an artifact that grants the user power in exchange for strict bindings. Erlen trembled slightly, feeling tense. That voice sounds too real. It feels like I'm actually in this world. He said, first limit. The other voice replied, speak. Erlen held out his hand and continued, in all surgeries. The sigils of Babylonia are absolutely mandatory. The voice asked, what do you wish to achieve from this binding? He replied, the power to bend the rules of the world a little further. Streams of power in the space coalesced. Granted. Erlen looked up at the dark scene. Light gradually appeared. He said, "Second limit." The voice continued to echo, "Speak." Erland formed another seal and continued, "In all surgeries, only the sacred language of Babylonia may be used." The voice asked again, "And what do you wish from this binding?" He calmly replied, "The same as before." The other seemed to fall silent for a moment. Erland looked up, confused. Damn, did I mess up a step? I copied the skill icon exactly. Choosing both the sigils and the sacred language as limits should yield the strongest attack power. He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. I've mastered all the seals and chants from playing over and over again. This has to work. Immediately after, the other voice spoke again. "Accepted." The voice echoed vaguely in the space. "O human who remembers the sigils and sacred words of the great forgotten God, we express our gratitude to the one who continues his will." Hearing that, Erland was confused. Continues his will? What does that mean? The ring on Erland's hand then vanished. He guessed, the ring is being absorbed into me. It seems the binding was successful. The voice spoke one last time. "I will always be watching you, inheritor of that will." Back in reality, Evan was still in a panic, shouting, "Young master, a ranked spell." Before him were the giant monsters. He reached his hand out towards Erland, worried. Is not enough. Erland looked up calmly, his eyes without a single ripple. Erland's hand began to channel magic. The iron orb that should have shone brightly only glowed faintly, even though he had poured all his mana into it. "No matter how much I train, I can't overcome my limits." He calmly created a magic orb in his palm. Then, it's time to test the power of the binding. The orb continued to accumulate power. The monsters were charging towards him. Erland raised his hand to control the magic orb, and the price for it was. This is the end. Please comment Erland below if you want next part.